So, here we are. I want to give a quick shout out to all of you who commented on my previous Ross video. I really do appreciate your sentiments. I also want to say thank you all so much. We just hit 250 subscribers yesterday. That is awesome. It has completely blown my mind. Anyway, let's get into the story. In r/RPG horror stories. The last story of Ross. From Castle Bravo XVC. That time a couple of player characters derailed a campaign, or how I learned to stop worrying and end a complete campaign setting. Alright, Ross. Again, this is it. This is the last one. I don't even know where to start with this one. I guess I should be upfront about the amount of Ross in this story. Almost all of the stories I've told about that chibi chipmunk of a man have involved the campaign I'm about to talk about. As a result, most of the tasty bits have come and gone. This is more a general story of how an okay-ish DM let a campaign get crap all over until it was just a big diarrhea sundae. But that cherry on top, you better believe it was Ross. This is the story of how a few terrible and destructive decisions, one simple player mistake, and Ross being about as smart as I hope you've come to expect, resulted in my giving up on my first homebrew campaign setting and closed the second chapter of my D&D career. I've sat up here on my high horse long enough, clucking my tongue and looking down my nose in judgmental distaste at the people who consider me friends for long enough. Something about getting off my high horse. These flooping analogies are killing me, man. I don't plan what I'm going to write out. I just start typing and eventually something kinda funny comes out, I hope. The point is, I'm not gonna sit here for 10 minutes thinking of the right term of phrase just to take a shot at myself. Fair's fair, and my time has come, but I ain't putting any pepper on it. I was not the best DM. Most of us were in our 20s. I was reliable. I really think that was enough to delude those sorry fools into thinking I was better than I was. My campaign had all the tropes of terrible world building. Hodgepodges of cultures and geography that made no sense? Check. Lifting characters from comics and ideas from fantasy in their entirety and plopping them down into my setting? Check. A super evil continent of evil that is evil because... just because? Check. And other stuff. I did that thing where you over-prepare way too much BS your players don't give a floop about, and then took them on a whirlwind tour of everything I created, only to be surprised when they couldn't keep any details straight. I wasn't perfect is the point. There was fun, but a lot of the heavy lifting was done by my players, and I just took credit for it. Just like them, political party you don't like. I'm Canadian, bud. I don't care about your weird two-party system, statistically speaking to the US residents, of course. All of you others get it. What's even with the two-party system, am I right? Weirdos. See? I just started typing. My brain and my fingers aren't exactly connected. I get distracted and off topic pretty quickly. Actually, really quickly, did you know that Canada has legislation protecting the right to apologize as a simple act of empathy and not an admission of guilt? Anyway, so that was a paragraph worth of nothing. To say that a few of my players were tired and antsy. And one in particular, we'll call him Stan, was already a crap disturber. He had gotten it into his head that the head of the church, like the Pope had, was actually evil. And so he decided to sneak into the Pope's chambers and confront him with his evilness. Now, the fact that the Pope actually was evil is besides the point. That the entire church was a scam and that the big bad evil god who had died in legend had actually just been broken apart, with his actual godhood becoming a new, less powerful deity, has no bearing on my anger. I was pissed because there were no clues, no telegraphs, no nothing. This was a crap disturber disturbing crap for the fun of it, and he just so happened to do it in the worst possible way. The great big epic plot. I was too ambitious for my own good back then. That would result in my players literally recreating the world was in jeopardy. So when Stan went after the Pope, dragging another player character along with him, dragged is the wrong word. That guy is a little rascal all his own. We call him Turnip. They were approaching an extremely high-level villain head-on with his deepest secrets. while their allies slept unaware and vulnerable to retribution elsewhere in the church. So I killed them. It is the only darn time in my life I have flooping murdered a player character without pause or regret. Idiots. But I didn't want the campaign to end there, so I had an ally sneak the rest of the party out of the church away from danger. I'm a big fan of things not happening in a vacuum. There are repercussions, ripples, and effects to the stuff my players do in the world. Some of it is good, some of it is bad. A powerful, evil villain thinking the group is going to reveal his secrets? Bad. That's a bad one. Should have figured that out on your own. Not sure why I had to spell it out for you. I reasoned that they would need to lay low, but an adventure comprised of a group of super recognizable heroes playing rummy in a safe house for months didn't appeal to me. So I decided to actually send them underground for a while. And I gotta tell you, I was proud of what I came up with. I am proud with no other concept I came up with like I am with that adventure. The memory is bittersweet these days, considering how it all ended. We took a couple weeks off so I could make an entirely new campaign. When we met up, their contact had told them he had a job that would send them underground for a while, and that he had a map for them. I proceeded to hand them about 40 pages of loose-leaf paper, filled with writing, and apologized out of character, saying it was only about half done. My players were confused, so I explained. Centuries ago, a dwarven expedition set forth through the Underdark in search of a legendary material known as black water. The water is said to have had an infinite untold power. 100 dwarves set out. One returned with a vial. And that vial was secreted away by the dwarven clan. But in the years that followed, they accomplished some of the most legendary feats the world had seen. And it was on good authority that their engines of myth were powered by that single vial. If they can make their way to the source, a mystical pump that will flow a regular supply back to the surface could be set up. And in the time they were gone, their contact would use his substantial resources to settle things down for a safe return. The water was a MacGuffin. The real point was the adventure and the map I gave them. It was a journal from an apprentice scribe of the dwarven expedition, detailing their journey. It was written entirely in character with all the knowledge of the journeymen. It described threats and challenges, but sometimes only vaguely, and sometimes incorrectly. It even used certain dwarven words, untranslated as there was no English equivalent, forcing my players to guess out their meaning from context. I thought it was a brilliant opportunity to fester some dread in the party and have some fun with format. They were, of course, free to try any different path, but they might not get there. Or they might encounter something worse than what the journal described. I had a few contingency plans in place if they did, but the journal was a guaranteed path. Over the course of the adventure, I had added about another 20 pages and still had about 20-ish to go. It would have detailed the whole doomed affair. It was a lot of fun to make. But there was a wrinkle. The contact had sent them to meet an associate of his who had the pump, an NPC named Wong. When they met Wong halfway en route to the delve site, they discovered he was a great big, bald warrior. Wong was actually evil. Actually, Wong was actually dead. This was Grigori, a character one of the party had actually met before. But that character had retired to deal with the god of the undead hating his flooping guts. Seriously, don't play with the deck of many things. And the player didn't recognize the description. He was planning on killing the party in revenge for the slights to his brothers, who they also had previously met and kinda killed on one occasion. So this is gonna be fun. Maeders, and Aboleth, and Deo, and rolling balls of fungi that melted your insides with a sudden betrayal thrown into the mix. We're all set for the next dozen or so sessions. The party consisted of a glorious cleric, and also the old stalwart bard who lasted from session 1, both played by Eric, a badass cleric played by Rod, a dwarven attaché played by Brandon, and a druid played by Ross. I think there was someone else. I don't know. A lot from that campaign has overshadowed my memory in the intervening years. I'd like to pause right here for one moment and describe me as a DM for a second. I grew up when D&D was hard. Like, gay porn hard. Experience was hard fought for, levels were magnificent achievements unto themselves, challenges were frequent and rough, and treasure was random. You rolled. That will become depressingly relevant in a moment. So, they're following the map. It first describes how the Dwarven expedition spent a month building an elevator down a 500-foot underground cliff. And during that time, something was moving through the stone and snatching dwarves. So they floop right past the modder before I can really mess with them. And the elevator is rotted away. I'm not going to get into every little thing. I just wanted to express that there were some challenges. Luckily, I had a few good players. Not Ross, who were quite adept at some creative thinking. Believe me. Seriously. You gotta believe. Anyhow, they randomly roll for treasure after one encounter results in them finding the monster's hoard. One of the rolls is for some drums. Who here has actually encountered a cursed item of any substance? Like something that will really floop up a game. Hopefully not many. A cursed item here or there is a funny enough thing. But a DM should flooping know better than to introduce something that can really gum up the works. Seriously, don't play around with a deck of many things. The group could identify magic items. They weren't high enough level to remove curses. They all agreed to wait until they had refreshed their spells to identify everything. Then watch came, and Brandon decides he can't wait. On his watch, he decides to play with the bongos. Well, they looked like bongos. They were drums, of deafening. I ask him how he plays with them. Because I'm a big DM, wearing his big boy pants, and I make the decisions. No matter how terrible, you play with the cursed item, you're gonna get the curse. Literally no common sense is what I'm getting at. Brandon drums his palms on his knees, doing a little beat. Ba, da da bum, bum. Hitting each palm in turn against the respective knee in succession, back and forth. And I started to relax. Until he finishes off with hitting both palms down against both knees simultaneously, thereby officially activating the curse. Everyone within a certain radius is immediately made deaf. Permanently. Restoration is needed. Which they can't cast it. Floop me, what fun! Brandon's dwarf realizes he can't hear anymore. Puts the drums back, and promptly goes to sleep in order to act just as flooping confused as all the other characters in the morning. Butthole after my own heart, that one. Okay, so the party is permanently deaf, in the Underdark, only a quarter of the way through, with no way back the way they came, because they can't swim up a rushing waterfall. One of Ross's few good plays was saving everyone from drowning by parting the water so they could climb out. I can work with this. But you know what? Wong, he needs to go. I can't have my players get betrayed now. There's something going around and no one has any penicillin. They got enough to deal with right now. They don't need a backstabbing by a demigod. Oh, he was a demigod. Kind of. That is good information to have. So one night, while the party is camped by a river, I have Griwangi start just flooping cursing them out. They can't hear him, and he hates them. So he takes the opportunity to just lay into them and say how much he's going to murder them. It's a lot. He's planning on doing a lot of murder to them. They're deaf, I hear you exclaim. How does him threatening to kill them reveal anything? Well, if you'd settle down, I'd tell you. Someone could lip read? No. But seriously, stop interrupting and I'll tell you. We could sit here all day and keep guessing. Or, I could get on with it. I've been writing this crap for a week now. It's time to head home with it. So zip it in for 2 more seconds and I'll tell you. Ross. Ross could technically hear. As a druid, he had a familiar. Unlike in 5th, or maybe other editions. I don't know much about 3rd or 4th. Those kind of passed me by. Familiars were actual animals summoned by the wilderness, and not some spiritual what's-it given physical form. Ross had summoned a familiar in the Underdark, and through the familiar, he could experience its senses. And thankfully, Ross had made a point of saying he was sending his bat off to go hunt that night, and so it was out of range of the dwarves' drumming. If he hadn't, he'd be permanently stuck with a deaf bat as his familiar, with no way to replace it. Thank Floop he sent it away, or he'd be as deaf as a bat. So it all comes down to Ross. Never has a more disappointing sentence been written by my hand. Ross, through his bat, hears the muttering. He can't quite make out the voice as it's low and the river is loud, but he distinctly hears threats to murder each and every member of the party. Everyone except for Wangori. I like that name, Wangori. I figure that's enough to put 1 + 1 together. That's right, I had learned nothing. That was about to change with a few simple words to be spoken in a few moments. Ross wakes everyone up to warn them what he's heard. Okay, this is it. They're gonna discover Regangori, that's as best as I'm gonna get, is evil. Big fight, huzzas, and back to a regularly scheduled nightmare. Then Ross, ever so delicately, placed the cherry atop the whole mess. The river is evil. The river is evil. I heard it muttering that it wanted to kill us. I can't. The river is evil. I heard it muttering that it wanted to kill us. Flooping, excuse me? The river is evil. I know what I did was dumb and rough. I thought I could spin it into something fun. And that was what he had come up with? Everyone else around the table had figured it out already. But Ross was the only one who could hear. Everyone was relying on him. The completion of his campaign relied on Ross. You know that shot in horror movies where they dolly in while also zooming out, so they really floop with the perspective? I felt that then. The river was evil. I immediately lost all confidence in my ability to run that campaign. I was done. Flooped had been too crap at that point, and I needed to do the mercy of putting a bullet behind the ear of my campaign, because no one else was going to do it. A few days later, I let everyone know that I didn't think the campaign could continue. There were some token, half-hearted reassurances of, "Nah, dog, it's still good and stuff." But in truth, we all saw the writing on the wall. It was hard to miss, spelled 100 times over in letters 50 feet tall. People called nerds they go the house. I don't know what that means. Wait, my Latin is a little off. I mean to say, the game was over. Listen, I don't know what you wanted from me. If you expected me to go out on Ross with a bang, you've never heard him whimper. Not every RPG horror story needs to be about one person being indignant or incredulous at other people's floopery. Every time you point a finger, there's 3 other pointing right back at you. We should all learn to look inwards and finger ourselves once in a while. Let he who is without idiocy cast the first firebolt and all that. No, this was my horror story. Ross just had a walk-on part in the background. Sure, he pooped his pants and ran off screen, but it was all in the background at another TV show. I was the bad actor, casually chewing the scenery front and center. I probably got a few more horror stories in me, but they don't feature Ross, and I'm gonna take a break. Maybe check out Ross's Facebook page and see what he's been getting up to. We're still friends on Facebook. I don't want to talk about it. I know I'm sick. So that's it. Hope whatever all this turned out to be met your expectations. If it didn't, well, I'm sorry. And that is a simple expression of empathy, not an admission of guilt. Stay in school. TLDR, it takes a village to ruin a game. So that is it. That's the final story of Ross. But Castle Bravo is right. There are some times that there are problems at the table, but it can be yourself. And that's a pretty good story. I really enjoyed it. Have you ever noticed any mistakes that you have done while at the table? If so, post them in the comments below. If you enjoyed, subscribe and like, please. Until next time, hope you feel inspired.